It's alright, I can guess what you're thinking. You're thinking that this Montech King 45 Pro looks like a slimmer version of the King 95 Pro. And perhaps you're also thinking, curved glass and 4 ARGB fans? What's not to like? And you may be right, but you may be wrong. And that's why we're going to review the Montech King 45 Pro. When I say the King 45 is like a slimmer version of the King 95, this is physically true in terms of the overall dimensions. However, I'll pull off some panels and you can see that there have been some significant changes inside the case. Indeed, if you look at the front, you'll see the front I/O is also in a different location. Let's remove the main glass panel. And then we get to the front glass, which has the curve. And we can see that this Pro version of the case comes with 3 reverse 120mm fans in the floor of the case and a single 120mm fan in the rear. And around the back side, we pull off the panel and we reveal an SSD hard drive mounting plate, which swings open to reveal an awful lot of perforations in the back of the motherboard tray. This case is ATX. Remove that because it's swinging around and annoying me. This case supports ATX motherboards but not eATX. However, it also supports the BTF form factor, i.e. rear connections. And you'll note here we have an ARGB PWM fan hub and the 4 fans are already connected to that fan hub. In addition to RGB in the fans, we also have RGB in this lighting strip in the front of the case. What you do not have with the King 45 is airflow through the side. That's where the power supply goes. So it's airflow up from the floor, out through the roof, also out to the rear. It might be stating the obvious, but you don't get airflow through the solid glass at the front. So the fan configuration, this case is supplied with 3 120s in the floor and a 120 in the rear, but you could put 2 140s in the floor, a 140 in the rear, and 2 140s or 3 120s in the roof, more likely a 360 AIO. My attention is immediately grabbed by the compartment for the power supply. You can see the pass-through cable that connects to the rear of the case in the conventional way, and that means that the main compartment promises to be open to allow the maximum flow for cooling air, despite the fact we have loads of glass to give you huge amounts of visual bling. That sounds to me like the best of both worlds, so I think the smart move is to start installing hardware and see how we get on. The motherboard assembly centers around this MSI Mag X870E Tomahawk Max Wi-Fi PZ. A mouthful of a name, a significant point being PZ for Project Zero. It means that the power connections are around this side of the motherboard. Other hardware: Crucial T700 SSD, processor is an AMD Ryzen 7 9800X 3D, and we have some ADATA XPG Lancer RGB DDR5 6000 memory. Let's snap on the heatsink on the SSD. Now I do at the moment have a minor concern, which might turn out to be absolutely fine when we swing open the storage plate to reveal the back of the motherboard. We don't actually have much clearance for cables. I've got a solid 25 going on 30mm of clearance. It's just by eye it looks a bit tight, I think because I'm concerned about the actual power connections going on the back of the motherboard. We also of course have the cables going to the PWM and RGB hub at the top. I'm also just going to say that the cables going from the fans in the floor of the case and the rear of the case, they just trail to the back of the motherboard. A little bit messy. Okay, that's that side of things. Now we have the power supply, which is a Montech Titan PLA 1000 watts, so fully modular, 1000 watts by Montech. The OEM is Seasonic, they say as much on the box. White in colour with stranded cables. That goes in here. And to install the power supply, we release these two thumb screws, and we slide that plate. We install that on the power supply, put the power supply back in place, connect the pass-through cable, and all's good. So let's get that hardware installed, tidy up the cables, and then we can move on to the CPU cooler. In the main chamber, the only cable on show is the 12-volt high power for the graphics card. Around the back, we've got quite a lot going on. I've deliberately left the area behind the storage bay pretty much empty, so I could indeed install a hard drive or a couple of SSDs if I chose. But cable management was slightly fiddly. There are various cable anchor points and I've used them. I've had to use 10, I think, cable ties, which is more than I think is ideal, but mission accomplished. And now it's time for our CPU cooler, which is a Montech Metal DT24 Premium. It can handle 270 watts, which is twice as much as we require for this processor, and it's going to go into place like that. We replace the stock AMD mounts with the Montech hardware, install the body of the cooler, and then install the fans and the cosmetic cover. And the final component is our graphics card, which is a Palette RTX 5080 Game Rock, and it's an absolutely hefty piece of equipment, which slips into place with only a small amount of effort. And while I'm not sure you'd go for such an expensive graphics card in a relatively budget case, and I haven't discussed pricing yet, but I'll do that very shortly. But the point here is that there's plenty of space for the graphics card, and I'm really keen to see how well these fans feed cooling air to the graphics card, and whether it then cooks that air cooler which is sitting directly above. And now I need to reinstall the panels, and we're ready for testing time. We're running a combination of Cinebench R23 and 3D Mark Speedway stress test. The system's drawing 570 watts at the wall socket, the processor's drawing 127 watts running at 4.9 GHz, the graphics are drawing 337 watts. In the first test, the two fans on the CPU cooler are running at 1100 RPM and the four case fans at 1000 RPM, and it sounds like this. The ambient is 17 degrees Celsius, the graphics card runs at 61 degrees, the CPU runs at a worrying 95 degrees. For the second test, we increased the speed of the case fans, all the fans now running at 1300 RPM, and it sounds like this. The graphics card continues to run at 61 degrees and the CPU continues to run at 95 degrees. However, the clock speed has crept up from 4.9 GHz to 5.0 GHz. For the third test, we had 3 more Montech RX120 fans in the roof of the case. We now have 7 fans in the case. They're all set to 1300 RPM and the CPU cooler is also running at 1300 RPM, and it sounds like this. Our graphics card continues to run at 61 degrees and the CPU at 95 degrees, and this clearly looks problematic. When we use smoke to see what the airflow is doing, it looks slightly confused around the back of the graphics card and the intake to the CPU cooler, and when we remove the main glass panel, the airflow is clearly all over the place. It's time to take drastic action, so we remove the metal DT24 Premium air cooler, we remove the 3 fans from the roof of the case, and we're going to install this Montech Hyperflow ARGB 360 AIO instead. With the AIO cooler installed, we have much more space inside the main chamber above the graphics card, and we proceed to testing. We have the fans in the case and on the AIO set to 1250 RPM, the pump is running at 1500 RPM, and it sounds like this. And now the temperature is much more sensible. The graphics are still running at 61 degrees, the CPU is running at 82 degrees. I said I was going to talk about price, and here we go. The Montech King 45 Pro, i.e. the version with the 4 ARGB fans, is $89, gonna be $89.99 including VAT here in the UK, or $119.90 in America. I presume that's going to be plus tax. That strikes me as quite a large differential. I've confirmed those prices with Montech, they assure me they're correct. The regular King 45, i.e. the case without the fans, is going to be £69.98 including VAT, so the fans are £20, or $99.90 in America, $20 differential. So cheap, good value for money. And this brings us to my pros and cons. On the good side, you have smart looks, especially if you have plenty of ARGB lighting. Clearly a certain amount of ARGB lighting comes with this case, this Pro case, as stock, and my recommendation is that you add more. Secondly, 4 ARGB fans are included with the Pro, and thirdly, it's good value for money. Cons, the negative points. Cable management requires a certain amount of careful work, particularly if you're going to install a hard drive and or SSDs, which will eat up some of the space behind the right hand side. Secondly, the fan cables with the Pro version are somewhat messy. They just trail across the bottom of the case and vanish out the back. And thirdly, as I've discovered, air coolers are best avoided. Stick to an AIO cooler. Overall, I'm going with a worth buying award. I think this is an 8.5 out of 10. Do please check us out on TikTok, and remember, we're kitguru.net on the web.